everyone, wishing you all a very happy and prosperous Diwali. I, Durga Sircar, your verbal mentor, I am here again today with another question of Gmat Friday. This question is from the verbal section of the Gmat exam and it is a critical reasoning question of boldface type. Now, boldface is a topic that many of you might find very challenging. Now, have a look at the question here. And as always, pause the video here, take 2 minutes to solve the question and resume to have a look at the solution. Okay guys, so how do you solve a boldface question? So let's quickly recap that first before we dive into the argument. In a boldface question, what do we have to do? As the question stem suggests, we have to find the role of the two portions which are given in bold. So in order to do that successfully, there are certain steps which I would like to tell you. For the first step, what do we have to do? We have to concentrate and find the main conclusion. Now, what is the main conclusion? The main conclusion of the argument is the conclusion of the author. Sometimes the argument may have a main conclusion. Sometimes the main conclusion might be missing. On a boldface argument, you may also have multiple conclusions. So, it is very important to identify the main conclusion. Now, the second step is to identify the role of the two portions in bold. Identify BF1 and BF2, whether they are premises or they are conclusions. Then, the third step would be to identify the role of BF1 with respect to the conclusion and BF2 with respect to the conclusion. Now, this will help you in deducing the role of BF1 and BF2 with respect to each other, and that is what will be our final step, that is relation between BF1, that is boldface 1 and boldface 2. Once we have successfully done this, then we will move to the options. Now, let's have a look at this argument and see what is the role of each of the individual portions in bold. The argument says, new historical research suggests to some historians that most early European settlers in the Americas underestimated the amount of time it would take them to learn to properly farm the land. So, what does this statement say? That the new historical research suggests that some historians, they were of the viewpoint that the early settlers in the Americas, these early European settlers, they underestimated the time it would take them to learn to properly settle down in America. This conclusion is based on written records taken from more than a dozen sites in what is now Virginia, New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So, the second statement tells us that this conclusion is drawn on the basis of these accounts which have been taken from these sites. So, the second portion in bold is supporting the first conclusion or the claim of the new historical research. So, the first portion in bold you could say is a premise, okay, or it is an information which is extending the conclusion. Now, let's have a look at the second portion. Other historians believe that, okay, so what do the other historians believe? Since these accounts are taken only from a limited number of official records of property that had to be sold in order for the owners to avoid bankruptcy, they gave a false impression of the status of farmers in these regions. So, the other historians believe that this impression was false. So, this is actually the conclusion of the other historians. So, we know that the first portion in bold is the conclusion of the historians that relied on the new historical research, and the second portion in bold is the premise and the conclusion of the other historians. Okay. Now, with this in mind, we will have a look at the options. As we can see here, there is no main conclusion. The first portion in bold is in itself a conclusion, but it is not the main conclusion. And also the second portion in bold consists of some premises and a conclusion which is actually opposite to the first conclusion. The two portions in bold are opposite to each other, but we don't have a main conclusion because the author never says whether the first people or the first group of people are right or the second group of people are right. He does not give his own point of view, so there is no main conclusion. Now, from our previous discussion, keep two things in mind, that the first portion in bold is your premise, that is supporting the first conclusion, and the second portion in bold is your premise and conclusion of the second group of people, that is the other historians. So keeping this in mind, let's have a look at the options. Now what does A say? The first is evidence, correct. First is premise. Let's keep or let's hold on to A. The first is background information. Okay, maybe. First is definitely not a conclusion, so I can eliminate C option. Then first is evidence. Yes, evidence is another word for premise. First is not a conclusion. Eliminate E. So on a boldface question, you will actually see that it is very easy to start eliminating the options once the role of the two portions in bold is clear. Now let's have a look at the second portion in bold. The second is evidence, correct. Evidence is another word for premise. Then the second is evidence. I can keep option B as well. The second is evidence. I will keep option D as well. So on the basis of boldface 2, I was not able to make a further elimination. Now I will move towards the relation between the two portions in bold. So let's have a look at the complete sentence now. A says the first is evidence for a stated conclusion. Yes, the conclusion is given in the argument, the conclusion of the historians that go with the new research. The second is evidence that is used to weaken the conclusion. This is absolutely correct because we know that conclusion 1 and conclusion 2 are opposite to each other or they are in contrast. So the relation is correctly depicted in the A option. Let's hold on to A. Let's have a look at B. First is background information. Okay, I am actually doubtful about background information, but let's read ahead. The second is evidence that provides a link from the background information to a possible conclusion. This is completely incorrect because the second is not supporting that background information, or the second and the first are not supporting each other. So we can eliminate B option. D says the first is evidence that supports a stated conclusion. Looks correct. The second is evidence that does not directly address the strength of that conclusion. Means the second is not directly strengthening the conclusion, but this doesn't mean that second is weakening or second is opposite to the first. So this opposite relation is very important and it has to be expressed within our option, which is not clear in the D option. So we can safely say that A is our correct choice. Okay. So congratulations to all of you who have marked A as the correct answer. That's all for today, guys. I hope you liked the video. If you like the video, please hit the like button, share it with your friends and subscribe to our channel. We will be back next Friday with another Gmat Friday question. Till then, happy studying.